Hello. With the NFL season only 2 months away, I've been getting really excited for 2023's year of football. And so I was thinking, as you can probably tell from the title, I would rank all 32 NFL teams 1 to 32 from how much I like them. We're going to be doing this in tier list maker. Thank you to Wyattzworld for the idea. Now, this is not a big shocker from my last video, but my favorite team in the league by far is the Green Bay Packers. I mean, hell, my first jersey that I ever had, and still my only jersey, I was only a little fella. Matthews. My dad's a Packers fan, my mom's a Packers fan, it's only natural. Now, number 2 is a weird one, and you wouldn't really think it, but the Chargers. Now, this mostly comes from a game right here, Madden 06. Because I love playing against the Chargers in that game. I think they're a really fun team, and LaDainian Tomlinson is very electric. Now, next up, we have number 3. This one is also a little weird considering the Packers beat them in the Super Bowl, but the Steelers. My dad is a kind of part-time Steeler fan, as is my mom. I do like Ben Roethlisberger, besides the incident, and I think they're a very positive team with a lot of good future if Kenny Pickett can pop off. Number 4, we have Cincinnati. Now, this mostly comes from my friend being a Cincinnati fan, but I also like Joe Burrow, and T. Higgins is one of my favorite players as well. Number 5, we have got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this mostly comes from this season of starting to watch them, but ever since they beat the Cowboys, I've been kind of rooting for them, and the fact that they even made it into the divisional round and played the Chiefs and didn't completely get blown out is really impressive, coming from them being the worst team in the league just a couple seasons ago. Now, at number 6, we have another weird one, but it definitely makes sense to me, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, imagine a time when you are just a little lad watching football, watching the Super Bowl, in fact, and you hate Tom Brady because your parents hate Tom Brady. What else are you supposed to do? Well, you can watch Nick Foles and the Eagles, even though you don't know anything about football besides the Packers and hating the Patriots, beat said Patriots. It was a very nice time. I kind of hopped on the Eagles for a little bit until they beat the Packers the next season. And I definitely rooted for the Eagles in the playoffs this season. At number 7, this is the last team that I really, truly do like a little bit, and this is the Jets, or really like. The Jets is because of my uncles, both my uncles actually, 2 of them, like the Jets. I also used them a lot in Retro Bowl. They were my main dynasty. Now, I had to mark them down. They probably would have been above Philly if it wasn't for the Aaron Rodgers situation, maybe even above Jacksonville. But I still like them. I think they're a cool team. Now, next we have Buffalo. Now, this one comes mostly from my dad kind of rooting for them in the playoffs, but I also do like the narrative of them losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. I think it's funny, and I think they deserve another shot, this time with Allen. I also think Allen's talented, and I don't know why people are criticizing him nowadays. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is another kind of weird one. I'm not really sure why I like them. I just kind of do. My friend kind of likes the Falcons because of his Retro Bowl, so I guess there's that. But the Falcons are a neat franchise, and I think they do have a positive future with the trades they've made. Next up, we have, at number 10, New Orleans, however you want to say it, the Saints. This comes from me liking Drew Brees in Madden, but also in real life, watching his career highlights. And the first game I really remember being invested in was the NFC divisional round where Tom Brady on the Bucs beat Drew Brees in his last ever game as a Saint. That was hard to watch, even though I knew nothing about the guy at the time, and as I learned more and more, and his kind of unfortunate career with no MVPs, I do feel sympathy for him. Number 11 is the Los Angeles Rams. This comes from my cousin. Shout out to Jake if you're watching this. He's a Rams fan. I also don't hate them that much for beating the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I think they're a neat team. I think their logo was better in St. Louis, but once again, that comes from, Madden. So I think, overall the Rams are not a team I hate, but not a team I super like. This is where we're starting to get into neutrality, and that comes with Chicago. So as a Packers fan, you would think I would hate these guys, but in my lifetime, they've never been good. So I really don't care that much. It's fun to watch them lose to us, but that rain game against the 49ers was hilarious to watch the highlights from. I didn't watch the game myself. I was watching the Packers lose to the Vikings. But I think the Bears are a good franchise anyway. Well, not good, but fun to watch sometimes. Next up, we got New York. I'm truly, really not very, neutral. Like, I'm pretty neutral on these guys. But I do like Eli Manning. And I don't hate Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, so I think I would root for them, especially because they beat the Vikings in the playoffs and showed everyone that they were the fraud I knew they were. This is where we come to true neutrality. I have no reason to hate or like the Browns. They are just there. I've never met a Browns fan in my life, so I don't even know if they exist. But, I'm sure people from Cleveland like them. It's the same story with the Panthers, except I probably like the Browns slightly more in the terms of neutrality. Like, I slightly hate the Panthers just because they kind of are disappointing. Another neutral team that I kind of hate just because they suck is Houston. And in fact, we can come in here and put Indy right after this. They're just two teams from the AFC South that I have no interest in watching and also don't have any real hate. So, kind of boring teams for me. Next up, we start to get into slight hate. Arizona, the Arizona Cardinals. I just don't like Kyler Murray. I think he's kind of overrated in my opinion from what I've seen of him. And I know he can be electric, but especially the Cardinals last season where they are honestly the worst team headed into 2023, it's rough. And DeAndre Hopkins' drama has just been dragged out long enough. If people are going to boo Rodgers for being unnecessarily dramatic, we need to boo DeAndre Hopkins. Next up, we have Tennessee. There's no real reason I particularly hate Tennessee besides them beating us this season. But I also don't like Tannehill. I think he's kind of douchey and getting out of his prime. And their offense is very boring, with Derrick Henry just running up the middle every time. I know he's good, but come on, man. Mix it up a little bit. Next up, we have Washington. I just think the rebrand is dumb. I understand why they changed it, but I don't understand why they went with Commanders and such a boring logo. It's dumb. I think that they could have gone with something way more creative. Like, look at the Washington Wizards. That's a way more creative name than Commanders. And it's not like they had to be renamed, but at least Cleveland with the Guardians renaming, that's a little bit closer of an example. It makes some sense for Cleveland. Commanders is just another name based off of the government. Come up with something unique like the Wizards, It doesn't have to be based off of the government. Number 21, Baltimore. This is the last team that I don't have any real hate for, but I just kind of dislike. I don't know. I just don't really like Lamar Jackson a ton. Although I do like Joe Flacco, which is weird, but I just don't like a ton of their players. Like, I'm not interested in their players. With them, Lamar Jackson is good, but, not for me. 22, we have Detroit. This is where we're starting to get a hate, but by no means do I hate Detroit or any of its fans. I just am not satisfied with Week 18 of the 2022 season. Also, as an NFC North fan, I do like the Lions succeeding, but I would rather not have them beat the Packers twice. 23 is the Raiders. Now, this is a weird one, but you might think this comes from them taking Devontae Adams, and it does. But as a little kid, this man right here, Clay Matthews, went to the Raiders, and that, he was the player who got me interested in football, more so than Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, that hurt. As a little kid, that really disappointed me, and so I don't like the Raiders. I also like the Chargers, so it comes naturally. Next up, we have Miami. I don't really hate these guys for any particular reason. I think Tua's a little overrated. He just can't stay healthy, but I do see his talents. But it's also just kind of a case of my dad not liking them, and so I don't like them. 25, we have New England. I already mentioned Tom Brady's whole hatred when I was younger, but now that New England has had a couple of years to suck and be bad, I don't hate them nearly as much. I hate Tampa more, which is why they're still on the tier list and New England isn't. By no means do I like New England, though. I mean, I'm still, as I mentioned, I like the Jets, I like the Bills, and hell, I even like the Dolphins more than New England, although that's relatively speaking. They are just not a very fun team to watch now, and I think that really that interception that the one guy threw, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, threw was hilarious, though, so that does give them a couple points. 26 is Seattle. This comes from the area I've grown up in. I won't disclose that, but basically there are two teams, mostly that people root for, the Seahawks and the Broncos. And those fans get really annoying. I will give the Seahawks more credit. They're a little more fun to watch. I like DK Metcalf. I think Geno Smith's redemption was really good this season, but ultimately I still don't like them. And right below them is Denver. The only thing that moves Seattle above Denver is that they suck more and also have had more Super Bowl success in my time of watching football and kind of caring about football, although I didn't really care about football until this year, and Seattle. Also, 1 yard line is funny. Next up, we have Dallas. This, once again, comes from my parents, but I feel like everybody hates Dallas, and honestly, I kind of have to agree. They're boring. They kind of really do choke a lot, and as a partial Eagles fan, you can't help but get mad when they beat Gardner Minshew, which is not a surprise by any means, but it took away from the Eagles' record. Blah. So I think the Cowboys are kind of a real disappointment, and I also don't like them, but at least the Packers beat them. Next, we have basically the same story, 49ers, except this hatred is much more like I actually hate them. Like, these are ones where I've personally experienced a reason to really hate these guys. I don't like San Francisco. You know how many times they've beaten the Packers in the NFC Championship? It's like 5 times with Rodgers, and I'm sure there was more during their dynasty. I do like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. They're two of the greatest of all time. I personally think Joe Montana is better than Tom Brady, personally, because he never really had a real controversy. But I also just don't like the 49ers in general, and seeing them not really choke, but just get blown out in the NFC Championship was really satisfying. And next up, we have Minnesota. This comes mostly from this season. They were just so overrated. People were acting like they were going to go all the way this year, when to me, as a Packers fan, it was clear. I, in fact, wrote a whole persuasive essay that I might publish a video reading a little later today about why the Vikings were not good last season. Mostly based off of their defense was not good, and defense wins championships, of course. And all their wins were very close. Like, most of their wins were very close, like, except the ones versus the Bears. They also had an easy schedule and came away with, if they were supposed to be so good, a record that should not have been as the way it was with that such an easy schedule. And also, I just hate them because I'm an NFC North Packers fan. 31, Kansas City. You know, I didn't completely hate them until this year. It was a really good Super Bowl to watch, but the ending really messed with me, and I know I can blame that on the rest, but I'm also going to blame it on Kansas City because I felt like the AFC Championship ended the same way. it's pretty clear that right now they're filling the same shoes as the Patriots, which means that in a while everybody's going to hate them and get tired of them winning. I'm not taking away anything. I believe Patrick Mahomes is really good. I believe Travis Kelce probably is a top three, maybe even top two tight end ever. And I do believe that the rest of their team is solid. It'll work around Patrick Mahomes, but ultimately, I just don't like having them already win 2 Super Bowls and constantly be winning. It's annoying. My friend is also a bandwagoner. He was originally a Vikings fan, but all of a sudden became a Chiefs fan once they got good. So, yeah, that kind of takes away points as well. But there's one team I hate more, and that's Tampa Bay. It comes from Tom Brady, really, and the NFC Championship 2 seasons ago, but I just don't like 3 seasons ago. Feels like it was forever ago. I just don't like Tom Brady, and I don't really like the Buccaneers in general. I remember back when they really sucked, and I was just a little kid, and I had never heard of the Buccaneers. And I asked my dad, there was this bar sign at a restaurant we were eating, and I was like, oh, who are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And he just said some really bad team. Now, that's kind of true again. I hope Mike Evans gets into a different franchise where he doesn't have to be a gem in the rough. And so that was my list of every NFL team from 1 to 32 based off of how much I like them. This is by no means based off of skill. I just like to say that again. So, if anybody's in the comments is mad, these are my opinions. You can have your own opinions. But anyway, I think that should be the end of this. So, have a good one, and I might post a video later. Goodbye.